Okay, I'm going to be very, very brief. I know everybody's traveling for Thanksgiving, and the rest of you are probably out there trying to shop for Black Friday deals. Black Friday deals. Markets will be closed Thanksgiving Day. We'll have an abbreviated session on Friday. Markets were down today. Nvidia being a drag on the NASDAQ. Some earnings as well. We have the S&P 500, again, still having our green awesome oscillator bars. There is a divergence that has developed. Whether it's done or not, we'll see. Momentum is still bullish. Saw NASDAQ momentum turn bullish yesterday. S&P the previous week. Saw NASDAQ turn back to bullish yesterday with momentum here. Again, things still green here, but down today 0.85% with NASDAQ down 178 points. Again, the semiconductors weighing down and Nvidia weighing down on the NASDAQ. P and the Dow reached new highs. The Dow another high today. NASDAQ or S&P gapped lower. The Dow a new high. Got a little topping tail on it though. And again, NASDAQ has been unable to make new highs. I was also forming a divergence with the awesome oscillator. The MACD went a little bit higher, but still has a divergence in play on the awesome oscillator and the stochastic and other indicators. And it may not be done. Ended down after the rally up to new highs. Ended down 138 points, down 0.31%. The way the S&P was down 23 points, rounding up, down 0.38%. NASDAQ took a bigger hit. Got a divergence, very similar. Again, it's not moving to a new high like the Dow did and the S&P yesterday, but there's a divergence developing on the MACD and the awesome oscillator and the stochastic here. Momentum still bullish though. Squeaked out again. It was up just under 2 points today. Pretty much flat while the rest of the market was down. Please support the channel with the link directly below. That allows me to be able to provide you this information. If you like the charts, you like the indicators, let me know that by supporting the channel. If you could take a moment to partner with me, I would really, really appreciate it. I don't have any sponsors, just a direct relationship with you because I don't want to sell you a bunch of stuff. But I need your help in order to make it work, so please consider partnering with me today. Follow the link below to take you to a secured site and you can donate any amount you want. I thank you for your consideration for that. I want to wish everybody a wonderful Thanksgiving. Completed a 13 countdown sell signal on the S&P. This rising wedge, I talked to you about this before, that again, we completed that 13 count. We've got a 5 here of a 9. The 9 can still complete with 4 more sessions. That would mean next Wednesday, but every bar has to be above the bar from 4 bars ago. We did see that happen. We can go to the upper boundary and get a double sequence count reversal signal, 13 followed by a 9. If we don't, if we start to sell off, then I'll be watching this trend line, and I'll be watching NASDAQ breaks this trend line, which it's right at it. If Nvidia can get a bounce, you can see the NASDAQ try to recover off of that trend line of support, which you'll see in this video. But wanted to make you aware, again, we got that 13 count, we got a possible 9 count that may follow. These counts show price exhaustion, but a 13 fall by 9 is a reversal pattern. P daily chart here. Here's what happened today. The S&P had gapped lower. Okay, we saw the gap down and we sold off, went back to fill this gap right here, and then we rebounded. We dropped below the 50 period here on the 15-minute chart. We dropped below the trend line, broke the trend line right here from these recent lows. Filled that gap at 59.87. We gapped lower at 6,020, previous day's close. So again, we're going to be watching. We went as high as 6,025. Line in the monthly time frame right around 6,040 if we hit it this month. If we don't, it goes a little higher next month. That trend line continues to rise in the monthly time frame, as I've talked about. High 6,000 area, and again, I've talked about seeing that trend line, even overthrowing it and going into the 6,100 level. Lighter volume. We have an abbreviated session on a Friday. We'll get the for Black Friday sales and then Cyber Monday and over the weekend and all kinds of fun stuff. Watching to see how that impacts the market. That's what happened today. We gapped higher yesterday and we went back and filled that gap today. Same thing over here, gapping higher, pulling back, filling the gap, and then resuming the advance. So we'll see what happens here now that we have filled the gap at 59.87. So we've come back to fill these gaps over the last couple days over here. Back over here, I told you we were going to come back and fill the gap up here, 59.50. I told you I thought we had bottomed here at the 200 period here, and the gap support area just moving slightly below it. That was a 20 period moving average on the daily chart. Just like I told you over here, that, again, I believe that the divergence here was a bottom. 50 period moving average and horizontal support in the daily time frame. Talked about the rally ahead of the presidential rally election results there, and then talked about the divergence that developed on the RSI here on the 60-minute chart. And let me just pull this down so you can see it. The divergence here, told you we were going to get a sell-off with that. We did. But then I told you I thought we had bottomed there with the 200, and we did. I told you if I was wrong about that, we could still test the trend line and fill this gap right here, but I told you I didn't think that would happen. I thought this gap would fill. It did, and I thought we'd resume the advance and go to new all-time highs, which we have done. Again, my target level, the mid 6,000 area, on into the 6,100 level. It's the high range of my target level. We've already hit the low range of my target level, the monthly time frame, which I've talked about. We're up at the upper end of the range, the 6,000 to 6,100 area. There is risk of a reversal with the little miniature double top here. We do have divergences on some indicators. We do have this larger divergence on the RSI right here with the previous peak. As I talked about that being a possibility, we may get a brand new divergence here. Before all is said and done, we'll be watching the 60-minute chart here, which have this larger divergence that is formed on the MACD. May not be done yet. Again, we may get a divergence in this more recent price action as well. We'll be watching the 60-minute chart here. Zooming out, two major levels of support, this rising trend line right here, okay, and if we end up coming back and getting a bigger sell-off, and this horizontal support level here at the 5670 area. This is, again, a rising wedge pattern, so we're watching. NASDAQ came down and tested the lower boundary of the wedge. S&P is still far away from it. We saw divergences form on the 60-minute chart and some indicators. Momentum here, and again, that's given us this little sell-off. Back to fill the gap at 59.87, so we'll be watching to see what happens from there. And we saw on the 60-minute charts like a divergence develop here with the Dow today. It's hitting major resistance in the weekly time frame. Dow was up while the rest of the market was down, and then the Dow gave back the gains of the session, just falling short of this trend line, including the shadow here channel and hitting the trend line in the weekly time frame right here, which is the parallel boundary, the upper boundary to this lower boundary. I've been talking about the divergences as we've been talking about this channel on the Dow as well. Really, the S&P again had a slight divergence here, almost Class B divergence, where we had almost two equal peaks, and again selling off, going back and filling that gap there. Now, we do have divergences developing on indicators in the daily time frame through the S&P. They may not be done yet. Again, we could still reach the resistance levels in the monthly and the weekly time frame. Again, I want to make it clear, we could still fall short of those levels as well. Now, I think it'll probably reach those levels, but again, I don't dictate to the market where it's going to go. It dictates to me and provides information where it might go based on support and resistance, trend lines, mathematically based indicators. So again, we'll be watching very, very light volume, dragging the market down today ahead of Thanksgiving. Daily chart of the S&P, again, I believe that we're headed back up to this upper boundary that could take us towards the upper boundary on the weekly chart, and it could even overthrow the trend line in the monthly time frame. But you do have a divergence developing here. Maybe, again, a sell-off, but then it evolves into a bigger divergence. Maybe the divergence is not done yet, or the RSI could even move to a new extreme, going higher if the divergence does not play out. You've got the same thing on the MACD. You got the same thing with momentum. Could not be done yet, or pullbacks still go higher. But like I said, listen carefully. We still may not reach my objective target level. Still the possibility of a double top here. Again, I have the guts to tell you what I think. I think we're going to go higher. All the signals begin to turn bearish, and we start seeing the trend line break down on the NASDAQ and see the most important trend line in the stock market, the weekly trend line on Nvidia, start to break down, then all bets are off. My thinking is we're going to go higher. Watching my signals very closely. We do have a divergence, whether it's done or not, whether it gets canceled out, and we start seeing the MACD go higher and the RSI go higher, we'll see. Have come back and filled the gap off the 20 period. I told you we were going to get a bounce here, and we've seen that now happen. We've moved to a new all-time high, which I told you was going to happen. That now happened. I think we're going to keep going eventually and reaching this upper boundary. I wanted to warn you again, because I think that that is the likely path and the likely scenario. Market is going to do what the market is going to do. And right now, we're trading on very, very light volume, so we could be seeing manipulation up or down. And we have a abbreviated session on Friday. Rally can continue. Again, we can see this upper boundary of this channel being reached. Dow is reaching its upper channel, and again, if it starts to sell off and the S&P and NASDAQ start to rally, this is a level where we can go and we can hit that upper boundary of the rising wedge that I showed you. We have this longer term trend line here going back to the peaks in earlier in the year, but again, you've got this massive multiple point negative divergence hovering over the weekly charts, and it's everywhere. The question is, do we reach these levels here in the weekly time frame, or tag that upper boundary directly overhead in the monthly time frame and maybe overthrow it and reach this level? Guess is we're still going to see that happen, but I'm watching this very closely. The NASDAQ, we have this nice looking rising wedge coming back towards the trend line here today, back to the 20, but we bounced. We bounced there. Get a little hanging man candlestick, or we get a bottoming tail. Again, we did fill the gap here. If we can move to a new high, again, I'm watching the upper boundary here. Does a larger divergence develop here and we turn back up, or is this thing not done yet? We start breaking down. That would be bearish and taking out the 50 period. If we bounce here, that would be short-term bullish. Beautiful rising wedge here. Again, we'll see this eventually break down. Whether that's sooner or later, we'll see. If we can bounce here, again, I'll be watching that upper boundary. Stack daily chart here. Again, we might form a divergence right here. Like we did here, we formed a multiple point divergence here. We formed a divergence back over here at the July peak. Could see that happen right here. Again, we came up to just under that trend line, the channel since the pandemic low. We stalled there. Again, even if we overthrow that, we could hit the trend line in the monthly time frame. But again, I'm watching to see, is that going to hold there? Or are we going to go up and hit that upper boundary of the rising wedge and slam into this thing again, maybe overthrowing it? So watching this closely, we do have the diversions in place here on the RSI, and we do have the diversions on the MACD over here. So again, we're watching these divergences. And again, likely putting the finishing touches on the topping process. Divergences, when they begin to play out, will likely start a reversal, ushering in a bear market ahead of the recession. Now, again, we've rallied up to get a lower high. The Dow and S&P moved above the previous peak. We filled the gap here, 20,000, at just under 20,900. Again, we've got this trend line right here. We're just above it. And again, we're going to be watching, does the trend line break or do we bounce? I'm going to try to go up to that upper boundary. Extend it out further. You can see it's, hang on, my trend line moved on me here. You can see, again, it's moving closer. There's a weekly trend line. Again, if we do that, maybe even overthrowing it, you got a possible divergence that could form on the MACD. If we do move to a higher high, again, sometimes S&P and NASDAQ diverge at turning points. So I'll be watching that. And then we have Nvidia. Nvidia hitting key support. So NASDAQ coming back to this trend line right here, coming back to the horizontal support from the July peak over here. And we're trying to rest on that. We pushed below it, bounced off of the 20 period here, and then got back above it. Now we're at that July peak area. We're resting right at that and the 20 period again, and just above our trend line. Nvidia is finding support after the bearish diversions, finding support at the rising trend line and the 50 period moving average. We get a doji today. We were down 11.20%. We've dropped more now. Nvidia and Bitcoin both pulling back from the highs all week long. Nvidia since earnings, and again, investors were disappointed by earnings. They beat expectations, but these divergences are playing out. We're turning off a major trend line, which I've been talking about, and this upper boundary in the daily time frame, but a major long-term weekly chart. But here coming back to support this trend line right here, including the shadow right here. A candle of indecision in the form of a doji. So you got the divergences playing out. We'll see if we get a rebound back up, and then we'll be watching also. Does NASDAQ go higher, and does it diverge with Nvidia? We'll be watching that. Broken this trend line though, and again, if we rally back up, I'll be watching that. You have the 10 and 20 now getting a bearish cross. But coming down here, we're coming down towards the most important trend line in the stock market, and that's the Nvidia rising trend line of the channel. Before I show you that, again, there's a possibility of a double top right here with this rising wedge having broken down, or this boundary right here. if we bounce and then break that. But again, there's also the possibility of a head and shoulders if we come down here and then end up forming a right shoulder going into early 2025 there. Possible double top with this rising wedge turning off major resistance. And again, if we see a rebound with Nvidia, then we might see a bigger rally with NASDAQ. But again, Nvidia starts breaking down from this rising wedge, the second boundary here, taking out the trend line in the weekly time frame, then that's going to be extremely bearish for the stock market. Now here's the most important chart, the most important trend line in the stock market right now, and that is this trend line right here. Okay, if this trend line breaks on Nvidia in the weekly time frame, this channel breaks and the 20-week moving average is at that same level, and we see the diversions play out here on the MACD, and we see the triple diversions, negative diversions, the strongest reversal signal in technical analysis begin to play out when we start losing the 50 level. Okay, again, over here, when we got back above the 20-week, we got back, we back tested it, we got about above the 50 level, we pulled negative, and then we got into positive territory, and we've been positive and finding support at the 20, just under it right here, but got back above it, and the 50 found support at the, or the RSI found support at the 50, and then again here, found support at the 20, getting back above it, the 50 level here on the RSI. If we take out the 50 on the RSI, we take out the 50, okay, and we take out the trend line, and we take out the 20, that's going to be extremely bearish for Nvidia. Confirm a reversal, and then taking out this low right here, further confirmation, taking out this trend line, taking out this trend line right here, will confirm the divergences and the reversal of this peak off of the major longer term trend line in the weekly time frame. I just go further back. This is the close-up right here. This channel will be confirmed as a reversal if this trend line breaks right here of this smaller channel in this larger channel, reversing off of this peak. We reversed off of this level at the July peak, and again, that was when the CEO was doing all the selling. Now, if I zoom out again, this channel that we've had since the 2022 low, if that channel breaks, we reverse off of this one, it will be a confirmed reversal. We're breaking the smaller channel and reversing off the upper boundary of the larger channel, which again goes back through all the price history of Nvidia. So this is the most important trend line in the stock market right now, and if it breaks, it will confirm a reversal off this trend line and again likely do some serious damage in the tech sector with the NASDAQ and with the semiconductors. So the most important trend line in the stock market right now is this trend line right here. I want to wish everybody a wonderful Thanksgiving. Back on Friday, see how we close out the week, and I'll watching to see how we do next week, going into next week with the Black Friday sales and Cyber Monday and all the rest of it with the market. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving, everybody.